Janine again, and the time that this recording airs, we are in mid-September, and Lord, I hope the temperatures are a little cooler.
Yes.
I'm ready for some.
Me too.
I'll even take a pumpkin latte or whatever, because right now it's like, Well, I am back with Samantha Horton this week. We're going to continue our discussion. Truth of the matter is, we just took the headphones off and sat and chatted for a while. And I said, oh man, we should have just been recording this whole time. But we're going to pick up where she left off last episode. And again, this is heavy material. This is a relationship podcast. We center around the Enneagram, and we've talked about the strength of how a 7 copes with hard times. But we also have discussed that sometimes we mask, and we either deal with them at the time or deal with them later. But we're going to continue with Sammie's story, and this is really an episode about child abuse. If you haven't listened to the first one, I would very much ask you to go back before listening to part 2 of this. So we left off with where your dad had become lead pastor of, I guess, his own congregation.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so he was in that position for a while before he went on his missionary trip?
Yeah. So shortly after, on the last episode, we talked about how I had eventually told someone, and the pastor kind of handled it in his way within the church, which essentially meant keep it with us 4 and no more, and sweep it under the rug. The next day we had breakfast together. I think just a couple days after that, my dad left for a mission trip and was gone for a couple of weeks to Africa. And he came back and he was different. I think getting outside of the country and it just gave him a different perspective, opened up his worldview a little bit, and he started to kind of loosen the reins. So for the first time in years, I could wear jeans again. So that was pretty exciting.
What we were saying, the irony of that thing is what you were going through at the hands of your father. Now the thing that was okay was to wear jeans.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even, irony at its best. So things seemed to be good. Like we had turned a corner, and I thought, okay, I got through the worst part. Like I did it. I survived. I gathered enough strength to reach out and tell someone. And he stopped. Like he went away for a couple of weeks. There was like a buffer,
Yeah.
And things were okay. He'd come back. He seemed a little lighter. So we were good. I don't remember exactly how long it was, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, after he returned from the mission trip. And one night he was back, and it just kind of started up again. I think I was shocked. I don't know. I guess I just convinced myself that we turned the corner and that the worst was over, and that things were going to be good from then on out. And so I was devastated, and I kind of felt like I had reached out before, and things were quote unquote taken care of. And I didn't know what to do at this point. Like I felt like I had told everyone in my life that could help or that would help, and that they had done their part. And I didn't know where to go from there.
Well, and why would you? Because the people that you reached out to did the opposite.
Yeah.
They not only, in my mind, they not only did not help you, they became a part of the problem.
Yeah, they were
Except for the
complicit at that point. Yeah, the teacher did what she, yes. Everybody else, I think, just became complicit. They were told from the top, like, okay, from here on out, this goes nowhere. We're handling it. You don't need to ask questions.
And sadly, this is not, the story is uniquely yours. But the sad thing is this goes on all the time and all across the world. And that's why we've seen documentaries about what goes on in religious organizations. And I won't point one out, because the more we come to understand this is not unique to any particular religious organization.
Right.
This is an epidemic that has been hidden for years. And the top people in these organizations work together so the empire doesn't fall.
Exactly.
Because once this happens, once this comes into the light, then the whole system falls apart. And this is a system of control. So.
Absolutely. And then you're exactly right. Protecting the empire is the end. I mean, that's the end game. You can't let that fall.
No, then it's a house of cards, as they say.
Exactly.
So, and there's a lot of, that's really a different subject, but there's a lot of money and a lot of power that's behind that. And to think that one person could make a difference, is frightening to them. So the goal is to keep you quiet. We'll do what we do, and part of it is in their heart. I think it has to. I think I want to think. People think forgiveness is the ultimate, and we've dealt with this with your dad. He's sorry. Please forgive him. Is really what they're saying. Please forgive him, so we can just keep perpetuating what we really think is good news. Yeah. Because if people find out this is going on, then that's not good news.
It's not, yeah.
And so for you to come forward like this is, part of like the Me Too movement and everything. It's coming into the light and exposing what the heart is really all about. And this is what we're here to do, is connect heart to heart and find out, how can we be healthy together? How can we move beyond the shackles that you've talked about your dad had placed on him? And I want to go on with your story, but then we'll go back and talk some more about your dad and how you've dealt with that part.
Yeah. Just an interesting side note. I do remember, I think when I was younger, I was really dialed into my 8-wing looking back. And I remember after I had told and had that sit down with the pastor and the forgiveness talk and all of that, it started up again. And I didn't immediately, I had a lot of shame. I carried a lot of shame because I didn't immediately run back and say, wait a minute, it didn't work. Like, he's not really sorry because it's happening. I felt kind of paralyzed, like I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I decided to kind of speak the language that I thought they would listen to. And I called the church office and I scheduled an appointment to meet with the head pastor. And I got on his calendar and sat down. I took my King James Bible in with me because that was the end all be all. And so I had that, and I went to verses in the New Testament and Timothy, and we're pointing out like qualifications for a pastor, a deacon, elder. And I just said, well, right here in black and white, it says this. How do you justify sanctioning him as your preacher boy, and you've released him to pastor this church if this has happened? I was I felt very emboldened. Like, okay, I don't know why no one else sees what I see, or I don't know why they're acting like this isn't a big deal, but we've moved on and it's still happening, and I feel like there's nowhere else to go. So I'm going to like fight fire with fire and bring, I just
thought, what did he say?
He almost laughed like in a kind of in a patronizing, condescending, like, oh, look at you, young
bless
girl.
Your little blonde head,
yes. Like, good for you for getting into the word.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I honestly don't remember everything that he said to me, but I do remember the feeling that I felt leaving that day was, well, it is what it is. So, yeah.
And then moving on, tomorrow will be another day, as we've said.
Yeah. And I think, again, with my coping mechanisms and my brain's way of protecting me was, okay, well, we know how to do this. We know how to play this role. And so I just went back to, during the day in the sunlight at school, I was one way. And I just did my best to make sure nobody knew what was happening at night, because I was so ashamed. And I didn't want my younger brother to suffer. And I thought if things really blew up, that my mom and my brother would suffer. And even though I knew it wasn't my fault, I still felt responsible in a way. And I thought, well, there's 4 of us. I can just suck it up and be strong and push through so that the others don't have to suffer. If that makes sense.
Well, sure, because I think you probably knew what you did determined whether the family stayed a unit or not.
Yeah. So it just, fast forward, it just continued on. And then again, got to the point where no matter what the cost, I couldn't do it anymore. Reached out. My dad ended up moving out of the house for maybe about 9 months. And I remember conversations with my mom where she would say, your dad's living in his truck. He has nowhere to go. And we would be at church on a Wednesday night. And my dad, while he was pastoring, was also on staff at the larger church where he did just handyman and janitorial things. Mm-hmm. And so he was still employed there. And I would see my mom off in the distance of the parking lot, holding his hand, talking to him, hugging him. And I distinctly remember having this thought, apparently I'm the only one that has a problem with him living in our home. And my brother was very angry at me. He just knew that my mom and I fought a lot and that dad had to leave. And he's 4 years younger than I am. And he didn't understand. He didn't know what was going on. And I felt like, my brother's mad at me. My mom's obviously miserable without him. And it's all on me. It's because of me. I could say it's okay and he can come back and everything would go back to normal and they would be fine. And so I really felt that responsibility for their emotional well-being, which played into my kind of coping mechanisms too, as far as just denying my own pain and not dealing with my own feelings. I just focused on their feelings. But yeah.
So you found college. You went off to college and finally got out of the house.
I did, yeah.
Now, is that where you met Tommy?
I didn't. So I actually met him in high school. We went to the same Christian school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But his parents kind of jumped into the world of fundamentalism when he was younger, and they were in it for a little while and then just started to see some things that they thought, this just doesn't seem right. And so they bowed out. Yeah. And they were all, they, love God and, but they weren't a part of any organized religion or church or anything like that. But they did send their 2 children to private school because the schools they were zoned for were not known to be great. And so they sent him to private school, and that's where I met Tommy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So not only did you do the preacher's daughter thing, pastor's daughter, you were part of the Christian school.
Oh, yeah. It was a bubble. Everything.
It's a bubble.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, okay. So we had talked about you moved out of the house. Mm-hmm. And so naturally it stopped.
Yeah.
Because you were gone.
Right.
And so your dad continued to be a pastor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you got married. Mm-hmm. And this is just an amazing story. You had your firstborn was a boy.
Yeah.
And then your second one, what's the age difference?
There's just a little over 3 years.
3 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so tell about the day you gave birth to your little girl.
Yeah. So we didn't find out what we were having with her. I kind of sensed that it was a girl, but we didn't know for sure. We were living in...
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No.
Why did you not want to know?
Okay.
This is something so funny that So we've been sitting upstairs talking with our husbands, and Thomas made the statement that he wanted to know what the first one was.
Yes.
So kind of the agreement was.
Yeah. So our agreement was we found out the gender of the baby every other time. So I like to be surprised.
And that was
shocking. I like to be surprised, and he is very practical and likes to have a plan. And so he wanted to find out. I agreed to find out with the first one because I thought, well, yeah, we can, decorate the nursery specifically for a boy or a girl. So I was okay with that. But the second pregnancy was my turn, and I wanted to be surprised.
I think that is so funny because I love surprises. And Doug and I have talked about this on a previous podcast is, you think everybody likes a surprise, but they do not.
They don't. No.
So
Yes.
she was a surprise.
She was a surprise. So, as I was delivering her, which we didn't know it was a girl, simultaneously, my dad was being taken into custody by the FBI.
I mean, literally simultaneous.
Yeah.
Simultaneously.
Yeah. I mean, if it were a movie, there would be music in the background and the split screen and the montage. Yeah. So it was happening at the same time. And we didn't, up until that point, we had a boy name picked out, but we didn't have a girl name. And we just couldn't really agree on one. And when I gave birth and they said it was a girl, I immediately started crying, and they placed her in my arms, and I just took one look at her and I just said, Grace, her name is Grace. I just felt in that moment she was my saving grace to an otherwise, what would have been a very painful, traumatic, triggering day. I was able to have joy in the midst of all of that. And so
I love that. I think those moments that we are allowed to have grace, to have that reprieve, and to see that life can be truly a gift and beautiful. You literally had it placed in your arms.
Yeah. Even on the worst day. Yeah.
On the worst day. And they're all, every one of them. I don't mean
no, yes, of
crazy
course.
about the other ones.
But she is the only girl out of 5.
Yeah.
And I love my boys, obviously, and I love being a boy mom, but there's a part of me that secretly always wanted a little girl. So
sure. I think, yes. And my daughter would say, well, of course you did.
Yeah.
I mean, because I have all boys and her. So today, your dad is not a part of your life.
Correct.
He went to prison for a while.
He did.
Is he still in prison?
He was released earlier this year.
Okay.
After 14 years.
But, oh, wow. That was a long time.
Ironically enough, he didn't go to prison for anything that happened with me. We talked a little bit earlier, and I think, when you have traumatic experiences or painful things happen and you're not given the skills to cope, or like healthy skills to cope, or the proper help or counseling or therapy, dependent upon your personality, but one vice can give way to another. And looking back, I think that was the pattern in his life. Alcoholism, and then drug addiction, and then religion, going from being an atheist to a full-fledged, like the pastor's pastor. I could see that pattern. And so even though I had moved away and life went on, and he and my mom continued in the ministry and had their own thing going, and he had developed a very a really tragic, bad, I don't know the right word for it, child porn addiction, and the FBI had been investigating him for quite some time, and so that's how he actually ended up in prison, was for that. So
right. Well, we had talked about understanding nature versus nurture, and I have my theories.
Yeah,
a lot of people have I think it's a combination of both. But you had a decision. You could forgive him and find the joy in your life, or you could let that be you could take the victim role and let that be your defining, attributes of your life, and decide that your life was not going to have meaning because it apparently didn't appear to under those circumstances. But what I love about hearing you talk about his childhood was what is an apparent gift of empathy that you have that allowed you to, I think when you talked about looking at his family tree and the brokenness and the sexual dysfunction, even within the siblings and the cousins, and the drug abuse, the culture, which was his norm, produced a very broken person.
Right.
And without becoming conscious of who you are and able to make choices. And he had them forced upon him by going to prison. But I have said to you, and I've said before, one of the things that has been a challenge for me is empathy and learning, I guess, like I love Brene Brown, that empathy can just be sitting with someone. Empathy does not mean I'm here to fix your problems or have all the answers, but it's that ability to just share heart to heart. And so as a 7, and this is one of the things that I want to emphasize that we've said before, is not any two people look alike. No 7, even if you were both the same number, there are things that are gifts or strengths within you that are not within me. And so, but for you, when we were talking about empathy, you said, ironically, where that might sound, be a deficit in some 7s, you think it's a strength of yours.
Yeah, I do. And again, going back to the nature nurture piece, which I'm very fascinated with. And I think I kind of lean the same way that you do. I think it's a combination of both. Looking back, I've always been, even since I was a child, I mean, any stray animal, or if we would drive downtown and I would see homeless people, I would literally sit in the back seat and cry. And I just couldn't figure out what happened to them. Why did they end up where they were? And, we had a home, we had 4 walls. I don't know. I think in large part, it's because of the way I grew up and just the trauma of my childhood that I knew that I wasn't ever trying to be a fake person or disingenuous, but I lived a double life, and it wasn't by choice. But I chose to put on a happy face. Yes, I lived in survival mode all of the time, and I chose to put on a happy face and kind of be the center of attention in a good way, and life of the party and all of that, because it was so hard at home. And I think it just gave me an awareness that you never know who among you is suffering silently. And I kind of thought that sometimes the people that look like they have it together the most are the ones that could be hurting the most. And so I think it just at an early age gave me an insight that maybe I wouldn't have developed until later in life. And I'm grateful for that. I think it shaped me.
You chose to be grateful.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. It shaped me, and I'm grateful for that. It shaped me in a good way. And I don't know if empathy would have been as easy for me had I not gone through what I went through.
I absolutely think that, because you and I have talked numerous times about the similarities that we share. Oh my goodness. Look up a 7. So many of those things. It's like, yes. We share that. But then I had a home environment that was, I loved, I thought we had a great growing up. I look back now and think, oh, well, see, there were some areas where I just was kind of ignoring some things, but that's life.
Exactly.
That's real. Families, nobody has the Norman Rockwell painting. But for the most part, I had a very happy childhood. Cousins and, friends. And every time we moved, and we moved kind of often because for a while, my dad was an engineer and designing missiles and rockets. And,
oh, wow.
And so he would go to different states with projects, but then he went into the ministry, which, is a natural thing to go from engineering to the ministry.
Why not?
And so every time we moved, it was like, oh, new friends.
Right.
I had that very forward thinking, but I was not dealing on the home front with anything that you were. So I'm saying that because empathy, I was not forced into a place of having or developing the empathy muscle. And I think that's what you did, is you literally had that muscle. Man, you had that one worked pretty strongly to where now you have that, what's the word, where you keep exercising and you grow your muscle. You have taken that and you continue to have that observation of those who have it okay looking on the outside. And I hate that you had to go through it, but the choice you made was to take that pain and make it something beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I am so honored to know you as just a person. I'm grateful to have another 7 in my life to, for one thing, to be able to say, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
This is normal. But to be able to look at the strength that you have that's different than mine, mm-hmm. and appreciate that you are uniquely you, just like everybody else is unique. Mm-hmm. Every opportunity is an opportunity for growth or regression. Mm-hmm. And this is a lifelong journey. Mm-hmm. It will always be a part of your journey.
Right.
And I appreciate so much you being willing to share this story, because there are so many out there that are going through their own secret struggle. Mm-hmm. And it may not be exactly this one. Yeah. But I think being able to look at who you are through the lens of the Enneagram as one map mm-hmm. and one tool. You've talked about counseling. Mm-hmm. That's another one. Has given you the life that you deserve. And you are joy. You are just such joy to be around.
Thank you. Likewise. I feel the same about you.
Well, let me just wrap this one up. And thank you so much for coming all the way out here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I love who you are, and I just can't wait to see what life brings you as you keep looking for the next adventure.
Well said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And as always, I hope all of you get to know the joy of who you truly are by loving your own number.